Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ever wondered about the life story behind, well, one of the most influential figures in all of human history? We're talking about a man whose journey really transformed a whole society, a desert society, and whose legacy continues to shape the lives of billions today.
Billions,
This is
yeah.
more than just history. It's a deep dive into the moments that defined a leader, a prophet, and a statesman.
Absolutely.
So today, our mission is really to unpack the rich and, let's face it, complex biography of Prophet Muhammad.
Right.
We've pulled together a pretty fascinating stack of sources, from traditional Islamic texts like the story of Prophet Muhammad and the life of Prophet Muhammad, Part 9 in Makkah, all the way to a detailed historical overview from Wikipedia.
And our goal really is to navigate these diverse perspectives to give you a concise yet comprehensive understanding of his life. We'll explore his origins, his early struggles, those pivotal moments of revelation, and how his leadership laid the groundwork for a global religion. We want to offer you not just the timeline, the facts, but hopefully some insights into the why and the how of his extraordinary journey.
Absolutely. We'll delve into key historical events. We'll
Yeah.
highlight significant shifts in his character and leadership, and importantly, touch on areas where historical accounts might offer differing viewpoints.
Which happens.
Encouraging you to think critically about the information. So how do we even begin to understand such a profound historical force? Let's dive in.
Okay.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Muhammad, peace be upon him, born in Mecca around 570 CE. But his early life, it was marked by significant loss, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. He was orphaned very young, lost his father before he was even born, and then his mother, Amina, when he was just about 6 years old.
Wow.
What's truly striking about those early years, I think, is how these profound losses, first his father, then mother, then later his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, it seems like they instilled in him this unique empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah, for the marginalized, the vulnerable. He was raised by his paternal uncle, Abu Talib, who was a respected leader in the community.
Right.
And this upbringing, it clearly fostered a remarkable character. Even before any talk of prophethood, people knew him for being generous, patient, truthful, sincere.
And the people of Mecca admired this so much they actually gave him a title, didn't they? Al-Amin.
Yes, Al-Amin, the trustworthy.
What does that title really tell us about his standing in society, even back then?
Well, that title, Al-Amin, it wasn't just about him being a nice guy. It was a profound asset in a society built heavily on trade, on oral contracts.
Ah, okay.
It meant he was seen as utterly reliable, a kind of foundation of public trust. And this moral authority, it would be absolutely crucial later on when he starts introducing these, revolutionary spiritual and social ideas to a pretty skeptical Mecca.
That makes perfect sense. And he later worked for Khadija, right? A successful businesswoman.
That's right. He managed her caravans, took them up to Syria, and she was apparently so impressed by his honesty, his character, that she eventually proposed marriage.
Which is interesting in itself for the time.
Very. He married her when he was 25. She was older, about 40, but by all accounts, it was a very happy marriage, and she remained his only wife until she passed away. And the financial security that came with marrying Khadija, it gave him the freedom for something really crucial, these spiritual retreats.
Right, the cave.
Exactly. He'd regularly seek solitude in a cave called Hira, just outside Mecca, for worship, for meditation. Which raises a pretty important question. What truly triggered that seismic shift in his life during these retreats?
Yeah, because this is where the story takes such a dramatic turn. It's the year 610, he's 40 years old, and the angel Gabriel, appears to him in that cave. The angel commands him, read, Iqra, 3 times. And each time Muhammad responds, I cannot read, the angel presses him intensely.
Against pressure, yeah.
And finally, Jibril recites the first verses revealed from the Quran. Read, in the name of your Lord who has created, and it goes on, created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous.
And that was it. That was the moment Muhammad became a prophet. He leaves the cave, completely shaken, heart pounding, goes straight to Khadija.
And her response is just amazing.
It really is. She immediately calms him down. She says something like, by Allah, Allah will never forsake you. Basically listing all his good qualities, upholding kinship ties, helping the weak, honoring guests.
She knew his character.
She knew him inside out, and she became the very first person to accept Islam.
Her immediate belief is so striking. What does that tell us about Me, the nature of their bond, or perhaps the kind of trust he already inspired even before these revelations?
I think it speaks volumes. Volumes about the depth of their relationship, her unwavering faith in him and his character. She saw that truthfulness, that integrity that Al-Amin represented.
Yeah.
And that trust just extended naturally to this incredibly profound, maybe even terrifying spiritual experience he had. Her support must have been foundational for him during such a bewildering time.
Absolutely foundational. And not long after, Khadijah takes him to see her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal.
Right, who was described as a Christian, knowledgeable in scriptures.
And Waraka confirms it, doesn't he? He says this is the same angel, the Namus, who came to Moses,
Yeah.
affirms Muhammad's prophethood.
Yes, but he also gives him a warning.
A warning.
He warns him that his own people will persecute him, drive him out. He wished he could be alive to support him when that happened.
So this profound but initially very private spiritual experience,
Right.
how long could it stay confined to just that inner circle? What was the trigger for it going public?
Well, initially he confided only in a very small circle. Khadijah, of course, his young cousin Ali, his freedman and adopted son Zayd, and his close friend Abu Bakr.
The first believers.
Exactly, a very private movement at first, but the revelations continued. And around the year 613, about 3 years later, Muhammad began preaching publicly,
Okay.
especially against idolatry, which was, deeply entrenched in Mecca, particularly around the Kaaba.
The central shrine.
Yes, and this was a direct challenge to the powerful Quraysh tribe. They were the guardians of the Kaaba and its idols, and they derived immense wealth and prestige from the pilgrimage rites.
So a direct challenge to the whole power structure, really. What was their response? How did the Quraysh react?
Predictably, not well. They started to actively persecute his followers, especially the poorer ones, those without strong tribal protection.
The vulnerable ones again.
Yes, some were tortured, some were even killed. To escape this, Muhammad actually commanded some Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia.
Right, seeking refuge.
And the Christian king there, the Negus, gave them refuge, which is an interesting early instance of interfaith protection. But back in Mecca, the opposition just intensified.
And the years 619 in particular, that's often called the year of sorrow. Why was it such a pivotal, such a difficult time for Muhammad?
A devastating year. In 619, Muhammad lost both his beloved wife, Khadijah, his bedrock of support, and his protective uncle, Abu Talib, both within a short period. Now, Abu Talib, remember, hadn't converted to Islam, but because of tribal customs and his affection for his nephew, he had shielded Muhammad from the worst attacks of the Quraysh.
That tribal protection was vital.
Absolutely vital. With Abu Talib gone, that shield disappeared. The persecution in Mecca escalated dramatically, leaving Muhammad more vulnerable than ever before.
Wow. So deep personal loss and increased physical danger. Yet, despite all this, Islam kept growing.
It did, albeit slowly and facing intense hardship. But after about 13 years of preaching in Mecca, it became increasingly clear that a new base, a new home, was needed for the community.
Right.
The situation reached a head when the Quraysh leaders, fearing the growing influence of Islam, apparently hatched a plot to assassinate Muhammad.
A direct plot on his life. How did he manage to escape that from his own city?
According to tradition, he was informed about the plot, possibly by the angel Jibreel. And in a really clever move, he had his cousin Ali lie in his bed, covered with his cloak, to deceive the would-be assassins waiting outside his house.
The decoy.
Exactly. While they watched the bed, Muhammad and his close companion Abu Bakr slipped away under the cover of night.
Incredible.
This escape, this migration, known as the Hijra from Mecca to the city of Yathrib, which would become known as Medina, took place in 622 CE. And it's such a pivotal event that it marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar.
Year one.
Year one. It wasn't just moving house, it was a profound shift. Moving from this intense persecution to a place where the Muslim community could finally establish itself, build institutions, and, well, flourish. Reports say when he finally arrived in Medina, the joy was immense. People lined the streets chanting, proclaiming, Allahu Akbar, God is greatest.
A completely different reception. It's incredible how quickly things seemed to develop once he reached Medina. What were his first priorities upon arriving there?
Well, first things first, building a community hub. He immediately set about establishing a mosque, first in Quba, on the outskirts, then the main Prophet's mosque in Medina itself.
And these weren't just for prayer, right?
No, not at all. They were crucial community centers, places for political meetings, public announcements, education, even a space for the poor and needy, the al-Sufa. He also worked very hard to foster a strong sense of brotherhood, between the Meccan migrants, the Muhajirun,
The ones who came with him.
right, and the residents of Medina who welcomed them, the Ansar, the helpers. He paired them up, integrating them socially and economically. It was foundational community building.
And he also established agreements, treaties, with the various communities already in Medina, including the Jewish tribes living there. This led to what's known as the Constitution of Medina.
Exactly. That document aimed to create a framework for peaceful coexistence, outlining rights and responsibilities, and crucially, mutual defense for the new pluralistic community of Medina.
But as you said, the path wasn't entirely smooth. The tensions with Mecca didn't just disappear, did they?
Oh, far from it. The Quraysh in Mecca saw the growing strength of the Muslim community in Medina as a direct threat. This led to several significant battles.
Right, the famous battles.
Yes. First was the Battle of Badr in 624. The Muslims were heavily outnumbered but won a surprising victory. Muhammad attributed this directly to divine assistance.
A huge morale boost, presumably.
Immense. But then came the Battle of Uhud in 625. This time, the Muslims suffered heavy casualties, partly because some archers who were strategically placed disobeyed orders and left their posts thinking the battle was won.
A costly mistake.
A very costly lesson in discipline and obedience. Then, in 627, came the Battle of the Trench, or Khandak. Medina itself was besieged by a large confederation of Meccans and allied tribes.
And this is where that interesting defensive tactic came in.
Precisely. Salman the Persian, one of Muhammad's companions, suggested digging a large trench around the vulnerable northern approach to Medina, a defensive strategy apparently common in Persia but unknown in Arabia.
Ingenious.
It completely baffled the attackers' cavalry and ultimately foiled the siege. But during this period, tensions also escalated with some of the Jewish tribes within Medina, like the Banu Qaynuqa, the Banu Nadir, and most significantly, the Banu Qurayza.
And these events, particularly involving the Banu Qurayza after the Battle of the Trench, they're often points of significant historical discussion and debate, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And it's really crucial here to understand that historical accounts, especially the early ones, can diverge, and interpretations are heavily debated among scholars, both past and present.
Okay.
For example, some early biographical narratives, the Seerah literature, like the one compiled by Ibn Ishaq and edited by Ibn Hisham, detail specific accusations against certain tribes. With the Banu Qurayza, the accusation was betrayal during the critical moments of the siege of Medina.
Right, siding with the enemy.
That's the charge in those accounts. And these same narratives describe very severe consequences following an arbitration that the tribe itself supposedly agreed to, which, according to these sources, resulted in the execution of the men and the enslavement of women and children.
Which sounds incredibly harsh.
It does. However, it's important to note that other scholars, people like W.N. Arafat, for instance, have critically examined these specific early accounts, particularly the supporting hadith, the recorded sayings and actions attributed to the prophet, and the Seerah itself.
And what do they find?
Well, they questioned the reliability and the chain of transmission of some of these reports, suggesting potential inconsistencies or even later embellishments regarding the scale and the precise nature of these events. They've offered alternative interpretations.
So questioning the traditional narrative.
Yes, questioning aspects of it. But then again, you have other prominent scholars, like M.J. Kister, for example, who have strongly refuted those arguments, defending the general reliability of the traditional accounts found in the early sources.
So it's complex. There isn't one single universally accepted version of these events.
Not entirely. It really highlights the importance of, well, consulting multiple perspectives, understanding the nature of early historical writing and oral transmission, and approaching these sensitive historical moments with critical awareness of how history is recorded, interpreted, and sometimes debated.
That's a really important point about engaging with history critically. Okay, so moving forward from that difficult period, by 628, there's a significant development. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah.
Yes, a truce signed with the Meccans. Muhammad and his followers had journeyed towards Mecca, intending to perform the lesser pilgrimage, the Umrah, but were stopped at Hudaybiyah, just outside the city.
And the treaty they signed, it initially seemed almost unfavorable to the Muslims, didn't it?
On the surface, yes. They had to agree to turn back that year, and some terms seemed to disadvantage Muslims converting in Mecca. But strategically, it proved vital. It was a 10-year truce. It implicitly recognized the Muslim state in Medina, and it allowed for a period of relative peace, which actually saw a significant increase in conversions to Islam.
So a long-term gain.
Definitely. And that truce didn't even last the full 10 years. The Meccans' allies violated it. So in 630 came perhaps the most monumental event, the conquest of Mecca.
Returning to the city, he was forced to flee 8 years earlier. What was his approach this time?
It was remarkable. He marched on Mecca with a force of around 10,000 Muslims. The city surrendered almost without a fight. And what truly stands out is his approach upon entering.
How so?
He declared a general amnesty, forgiveness for almost everyone, even those who had bitterly persecuted him and his followers for years, who had killed his family members, driven him out.
Wow. After everything they'd done.
Exactly. There were very few exceptions made. He then went to the Kaaba, the sacred shrine, and personally cleared it of the hundreds of idols that had been housed inside, restoring it to the monotheistic worship of Abraham.
The symbolic and literal cleansing.
Absolutely. And witnessing this power, combined with this extraordinary act of mercy and forgiveness, many, many Meccans converted to Islam on the spot. It truly exemplified his character, as noted across the sources, that blend of strength and magnanimity.
That act of amnesty, of forgiveness, is truly remarkable, especially given the context of tribal warfare and revenge that was common then. Was there any sort of internal resistance to this incredibly magnanimous approach within his own followers, maybe those who had suffered directly?
That's a fair question. The sources we have primarily emphasize the acceptance and even awe inspired by his decision. It was seen largely as fulfilling a divine promise and demonstrating the core values of Islam, especially mercy. While individuals might have harbored personal feelings, the overwhelming narrative is one of unity behind this move. It wasn't just compassionate, it was strategically brilliant too. It solidified Islam's dominance in Arabia almost overnight, largely through peace rather than prolonged conflict. His mission was clearly nearing its completion.
And just 2 years later, in 632, Muhammad performed his farewell pilgrimage, the Hajj.
Yes, the only Hajj he performed after the migration to Medina.
And during that pilgrimage, on the plains of Arafah, he delivered his final sermon. This sermon is considered a cornerstone of Islamic teaching, right? It emphasizes some crucial principles.
Absolutely profound, yes, because it wasn't just for the massive crowd present, maybe over 100,000 people, but it laid out universal principles for the Muslim community, the Ummah, and really for humanity at large for all time.
What were some of those key messages?
He explicitly prohibited usury, the charging of interest, and abolished the pre-Islamic customs of blood feuds and vendettas. He strongly emphasized the sacredness of life, property, and honor.
Foundational stuff.
Foundational. He declared the brotherhood of all Muslims, saying no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab over an Arab, and no white person over a black person, nor black over white, except through piety and good action.
A powerful statement on equality, cutting across race and ethnicity.
A radical statement for its time and place. He also stressed the rights of women, urging men to treat their wives kindly and outlining mutual rights and responsibilities. And critically, he reminded everyone to hold fast to the Quran and his own example, the Sunnah, as the sources of guidance.
A truly unifying message, laying out the core ethical and social framework of Islam.
Exactly. And tradition holds that it was during this pilgrimage, perhaps even on that day at Arafah, that the final verse of the Quran was revealed, stating, "This day I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you Islam as your religion."
The completion. The life mission of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was fulfilled. He returned to Medina and passed away shortly after, at the age of 63, in the year 632 CE.
So quite a journey we've traced. We've gone from his early orphaned life, being known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one in Mecca,
Right.
through those intense world-altering revelations in the cave of Hira, a period marked by, profound personal struggle, but also external persecution,
Yeah, very difficult years.
culminating in that pivotal Hijra, migration to Medina. Then we saw how a community was built from the ground up, how battles unfolded victories and losses, and how peace was eventually forged through treaties, and perhaps most strikingly, through forgiveness during the conquest of Mecca.
Yeah, what really stands out to me is that incredible transformation in his role. He evolves from this sort of solitary seeker of truth in a cave to becoming a community builder, a legislator, a military leader, a head of state, really. Yet, through it all, the sources consistently highlight this core of sincerity, justice, and, as you said, mercy. And that farewell sermon we just discussed, with its emphasis on universal brotherhood, women's rights, the core tenets, it really feels like the culmination of his entire mission, doesn't it? Laying out the blueprint.
It absolutely does. And As we noted earlier when discussing some of the conflicts, even the historical accounts themselves, from those early Seerah, the biographical narratives, to the vast collections of hadith, the sayings and actions attributed to him,
Right, the different types of sources.
they offer layers of interpretation, sometimes differing details, ongoing scholarly debate, which, in a way, is valuable because it encourages critical thinking about how history itself is recorded, transmitted, and preserved over centuries.
Yeah, that's true. Understanding the process of history writing.
Especially when examining complex or controversial events like the interactions with certain tribes in Medina, seeing how different traditions, different scholars have approached these narratives helps us appreciate the nuances involved in historical analysis.
So, reflecting on all this, what does it all mean for you, the listener? Maybe consider this. Prophet Muhammad's journey started with a deeply personal, spiritual experience, almost a crisis in that cave. But that led to a mission that fundamentally reshaped not just the Arabian Peninsula, but laid the foundations for a global religion and a civilization that would eventually span continents.
Staggering impact.
It really is. His life demonstrates how profound personal conviction, that inner certainty, can become a catalyst for monumental societal, political, and even historical change. So maybe a final thought to ponder. How might understanding such a powerful historical force, this interplay, deep faith, practical leadership, and resulting global impact, how might that shape or reshape your view on the intricate connections between faith, leadership, and the sweep of global history?